would have to know about it.
Of course he does.
And that would mean that Bush had prior knowledge, and that would implicate him in reality, if we wanted to face this thing as it really is, in murder in the first degree.
Let me explain to the audience what's happened here. Okay, back in the 80s, 1980s, the Department of Justice proposed legislation to fight terrorism. And this legislation took away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties. One of the authors, a female attorney with the Department of Justice, publicly made this statement. I've got her name on my file someplace, that before this passes, people will have to be killed. Well, so that was the reason, I feel, for the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Unfortunately for them, fortunately for us, the good guys, there were only 6 people killed, not enough to pass the legislation. So what happened is, 3 years later, no, 93, 2 years later, April 19, 1995, down comes Oklahoma City Murrah building, 168 people killed. 1 year later, the anti-terrorism legislation that takes away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties is passed. And now with the Twin Towers World Trade Center episode, our Congress is now proposing further restrictions on our constitutional rights and civil liberties. These explosions, these terrorist acts, were an excuse to pass anti-terrorism legislation.
And then to implement it.
And then yes. And this is what's happening in the world today. And that's why our intelligence people are not only knew about it in advance, but probably involved. There's no question. You cannot possibly have an operation of this magnitude without our people knowing about it. Now, our government, the FBI...
When you say our government, and I got to challenge you. This isn't our government.
Well,
it's the banksters' government, because they control both political parties.
The government knows the what, where, why, and when, and how. And I had a FBI supervisor brag about this to somebody else, and it got back to me, of every patriot and every militia in the United States. Now, if they know that, are you going to tell me that they're not going to know about the terrorists coming and going? By the way, this operation, based on information that's come out since the attack, the terrorist attack, was planned in England, London, England. The training took place in Afghanistan and in the United States. And these terrorists came in and took pilot training here. And as I said earlier, bin Laden's phone conversations were monitored, according to the press, in February 1998. Are you going to say they didn't monitor them after that? No.
Well, wait a minute, no.
The NSA employs probably 150,000 people. I don't know what their payroll is. I mean, it's the number of personnel. But they have taps on virtually everybody in America. This was part of the anti-terrorism legislation that was passed after Oklahoma City.
Well, that's exactly what Adolf Hitler did when he burnt down the Reichstag.
Well, why do you think they're trying to do away with the Second Amendment?
The day you give up your firearms to protect your family, your wife and your children and your home, I'm not advocating anyone killing anyone, but if you give up your firearms, the Nazis will march into this country and take this thing over lock, stock, and barrel quick. The only thing that has kept America free, I believe, is that these people at the top, the Nazis and the fascists who have been waiting to destroy our country, the only reason they haven't made their move is because the guns in America represent the largest single armed camp on the earth as Americans. And I say don't ever give up your firearms, because when you do, you will begin to see quickly the complete and total collapse of America to the fascists and Nazis who are running this country from behind the scenes. Somebody better wake up. we are in serious trouble. I think the incident in New York was a staged incident, and the people who intend to enslave our country couldn't care less.
Well, they're trying to do away with the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and Bush comes out, and what does he say? He says, well, my administration, I'd like to lift that ban on assassinations so that I can have the authority to order the murder of my political opponents. He didn't say it exactly that way, but he says to stop terrorism so that we will have greater security, you are going to have to give up your liberty.
I was head of the FBI in Southern California for the most part, except for 2 southern counties in California, San Diego and Imperial County. I was in charge. I had over 700 personnel under my command. I had a budget of $22.5 million. We were the elite investigative organization of the world in our day. There's no question about who was responsible for the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Through their informant, Salam, the FBI informant Salam, they had control of whether or not to place a dummy bomb or a real bomb there. They placed a real bomb, and the reason they did was to pass the anti-terrorism legislation. There were only 6 people killed, not enough to pass the legislation. Now, by the way, the reason there were only 6 people killed is because the car bomb would be placed by a support beam of some sort, a pillar or post, and there was another car illegally parked there, so they couldn't put the bomb exactly where they wanted. Otherwise, that old Trade Center, the World Trade Center, would have come down at that time. That was their plan. So then, in 1995, we had the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, 168 people killed. Then, a year later, they passed the anti-terrorism legislation. But I'm telling you that the FBI knew about this, they had control of it, and did nothing to stop it.
G.W. Bush is a member of the Skull and Bones. He was initiated into the Skull and Bones at Yale University, born again into the Satanic Order. Most of the people in the Republican Party are unaware of this. They're unaware of his associations with the Council on Foreign Relations. There's been a film out called Skulls. The Bush boys have laid nude in the coffin of the Skull and Bones, born again into the Satanic Order.
Even the History Channel, in doing a television special on Nazism and Adolf Hitler, entitled the program A New World Order. And here we have the magazine on world conflict, and what do we see as Adolf Hitler, and the caption says A New World Order. We have Wall Street and the rise of Hitler. Who financed Hitler? American swastika. What we're talking about here are the people in power in this government are Nazis. No doubt in anybody's mind who has looked at this subject that the Bush family are heavily connected to the Nazi movement.
To understand why the Bush family financed both Adolf Hitler's Nazi movement and why they're doing billions of dollars of blood business with the butchers of Beijing, one has to understand the criminal mind and the mentality of the New England Illuminati. Their objective is to rule the world. The Illuminati elite is made up of men of power and prestige. Their symbols, rituals, and idols are satanic. They worship at the base of a 40-foot owl at the Bohemian Grove of Northern California. Agpu